turning conflict into connection is basically being able to argue while preserving the relationship. And that means maintaining a level of enlightened self-interest.
What do you mean by that?
It means that you don't say the things that you want to say just because they make you feel better or they get it off your chest. You think, what will this do to the relationship? What will this do to our history, to our connection, to what we are meant to do together? You have a higher purpose than just you. A relationship is the space in between the two people. And as I'm listening to this again myself, I realized that I was doing to her what I was telling her she was doing to him. And that's when I knew I'm inducted in the system. I'm talking to them with the same tone as they talk to each other. This is where I felt that I had lost some of my therapeutic stance.
So why that's interesting to me is that in our debates when we're live on a stage with people who are arguing with each other, my role is to listen exceedingly closely to each of them and to move them to exploring more deeply their points of conflict.
Right.
But without getting involved myself in the sense where I don't enter the argument. And that's a very, very tricky position to maintain.
Right.
I work very hard at it, and I think for the most part, I will critique a debater not for the substance of their argument, but for the fact that they're ignoring the point or that they've switched to another topic when we're trying to discuss A and B. But it's a very, very delicate position.
So these sets of values are very important and often very culturally reinforced and sometimes determined. I speak 9 languages, so I translate very much. I get a sense, what is the power dynamic around gender, around age, around birth order. These are very clear legacies as well that people bring. To what extent are you allowed to say that, to what extent are you allowed to leave a relationship versus you have to make it work at all costs? Because that's the value, that's the belief. So it's endless, children. Do they have a right to speak? Do you have a democratic system in the house? Does everybody's opinion matter? Or is there a much clearer vertical line of authority? Are you allowed to express emotions? And which ones? Is sadness permitted but not anger? Is anger permitted but not too much idleness?
You've touched on this, but I wanted to ask more directly about how tech, specifically smartphones, have potentially made us a lot more black and white in our conflict, specifically how being able to get immediate validation seemingly from our phones has maybe given us impractical expectations of human beings. Yeah, so I wanted to ask about that.
So I think there's a few things happening at the same time. On the one hand, we are more socially isolated. On the other hand, our expectations, especially of romantic relationships, are unprecedented and have skyrocketed. We don't just want economic support and companionship and family and a best friend and a confidant and a lover, but we also want a person that helps us become the best version of ourselves. And what also is happening is that we are basically told through our apps, where to go, how to get there, what to listen to, what to watch, where to go to eat. We are more and more in a frictionless situation that kind of is very polished. And it makes it more difficult when we then suddenly find ourselves in interpersonal situations that are more conflictual. People have rejected each other for centuries. There's nothing new. But ghosting is a different level.
To that point, are our expectations of other people in conflict too high and maybe our expectations of ourselves too low just because we can get out of there real quick?
I think our expectations are not too high, but they may be too high to put on one person. We need community. We need groups. We need friends, and we need different levels of friendship and different levels of acquaintances and different levels of associations and mentors. And, we need a host of people. What's really happening at this moment is that I'd said that 1 in 4 people in the US is disconnected from a family member, but among Gen Z, and the younger you go, half the people don't have a best friend. That is a very new social landscape.